You've already seen the title, you know what we're doing here. From a band that could barely play their own instruments, to one that's remained anonymous for over 50 years, to one where the lead singer kidnapped all of his bandmates for nearly a year and made them practice 14 hours a day, these are some of the weirdest bands and artists of all time. At least, the ones that I know about. This rabbit hole goes way deeper than I'm willing to go right now, but if you know some weird music that I don't talk about here, comment it below and I might make a second video like this.
The thing that sets the Americans apart from the rest of the cultures in the world is we're so fucking stupid.
Frank Zappa was a singer, guitarist, and composer. He looked a bit like Charles Manson and was probably every bit as insane. As a boy, Frank loved classical music, but as you can imagine, the weird kind of classical music. He started making his own music in high school, and in the 60s he formed a band called the Mothers of Invention, but he started doing his own stuff later in the 60s. Some of his albums include Joe's Garage, a comedy opera rock album about a guy called Joe who lives in a world where music is illegal. And yeah, he is doing blackface on the cover, hasn't aged well. He made another album called Jazz from Hell, which was made entirely on a synclavier? Synclavier? I don't know how to pronounce it. It won him a Grammy, and it got a parental advisory sticker, despite having no lyrics. Speaking of those parental advisory stickers, Zappa hated them with a passion. A fiery hot, burning passion. Like bringing music executives to the United States Senate to get them removed. Some other great albums of his are Hot Rats, Apostrophe, and Shake Your Booty. Unfortunately, Zappa died fairly young from cancer in 1993, but not before he produced and worked on 60 different albums, including his own. And that's not including the other 68 that he has credits on that came out after he died. I'm honestly barely dipping my toes into Zappa's work here, and there is so much more to learn about him if you're interested. At some point soon, I'm going to start working on like a big Frank Zappa video where I cover all of his solo albums in one go. So if that sounds interesting to you, make sure you're subscribed to know when it's out. Until then, at least we can remember him by his famous quote, "Jazz is not dead, it just smells funny." Whatever the fuck that means. So, the Residents are actually, I don't know who they are. Nobody knows who they are. These guys have been performing since the early 70s, and they have remained anonymous the whole time. And they've done literally everything you can think of. They have over 60 albums, including one where they all pretend to be Kanye West, one with 40 songs that are all exactly 1 minute long, and an album that went with a YouTube ARG in 2008. I mean, talk about being ahead of your time, like, Jesus Christ. These guys don't really seem to care if the music they make is actually good or not, as long as it confuses people. Definitely like the epitome of you get it or you don't. And yes, they always have these weird eyeball heads. No, I don't know why.
My pal's name is Football, he always likes to drum.
So the Shaggs come up pretty frequently in these weird music discussions, and that's for a good reason. The story is that a man named Austin Wiggin Jr., whose mother told him before she died that he would marry a strawberry blonde woman, which he did. They would have 3 daughters, which they did. And these daughters would form a famous band one day. So, Austin took it upon himself to make the last part come true. He took the girls, Dot, Betty, and Helen, out of school and made them practice music full time. They make an album in 1969 called Philosophy of the World, featuring hit songs like My Pal Foot Foot and Why Do I Feel. These girls could kind of play their instruments, but they had no idea why they were playing their instruments. And what I mean by that is they had no concept of music theory or how to write a song. Like, they were avoiding music theory like they owed it money. And the singing was given the same kind of energy as a school presentation. It's like they had never heard music before, but they had read something about it in a book one time and figured they'd give it a go. The band broke up when their dad tragically passed away. However, the album was re-released in the 80s and became a cult classic. Frank Zappa said that the Shaggs were better than the Beatles. Yeah, the Frank Zappa I was just talking about a minute ago. And Kurt Cobain of Nirvana fame said it was his 5th favourite album of all time. One of the members of the Shaggs, Dot, even started a new band in 2000s making stuff that's just as weird. Imagine you're walking down the street at night and you see a shirtless homeless guy that looks like he hasn't got a haircut in years and smells like he hasn't showered in the same length of time. He's got some really old laptop from like 20 years ago, like proper shitbox thing. Suddenly, his laptop crashes and starts making weird noises. The homeless guy looks up at you and starts shouting at you. You can't tell what he's saying, and you try to run away, but then he starts chasing you down the street with his laptop that's still glitching out, held over his head, and he's still yelling, and now everyone's looking at you, and it's just a whole mess. That's kind of what Death Grip sounds like. It's 3 guys from California, MC Ride, Andy Moran, and Zach Hill. Similar to Frank Zappa and The Residents that I talked about earlier, every album they make is definitely still them, but they each have a really unique style compared to the previous ones. The Money Store is mostly electronic headbangers, No Love Deep Web is really minimalistic in sound, NOTM has instrumentals made entirely of Bjork samples, and Jenny Death asks, what if Death Grips was a noise rock band? And the answer is hell fucking yeah. Their fan base is a little infamous, lots of Anthony Fantano fans because The Money Store was his first ever 10 out of 10 review, but you also get some fun characters like the Philadelphia Floor Pisser. Mr. Bungle is goofy chaos. It's carefully constructed and controlled goofy chaos, but still goofy chaos. Imagine a band where every genre is on the table and they're flipping the table 3 times every song. Imagine you're grooving to a really chill jazz section. It's pretty cool. Suddenly, it's thrash metal. Next time, you're in the middle of a circus ring full of angry goths. No transitions, no warnings, just full sonic whiplash. Sometimes they wrote songs about the gradual decline of the human body due to social interactions. Sometimes they wrote lyrics about their favorite types of corn. And sometimes they just wrote like actual gibberish. Their best album is probably Disco Volante, which is like a David Lynch-esque nightmare in album form, but my personal favorite is their debut. Unfortunately, they haven't really made any music since the 90s because the Red Hot Chili Peppers basically shut them down after a pretty intense beef that they had. And if you want to know more about that, and all of their albums, and the stories behind their albums, you can check out my videos on them here on this channel. So, you don't really listen to Aphex Twin. It's more that the Aphex Twin himself just kind of puts the music into your brain. He just plugs it in there. His real name is Richard D. James, and his genre is music, I guess. I don't know. It's technically called IDM or intelligent dance music, but he doesn't actually like that term, and honestly, I don't either. Because, first off, it sounds really fucking pretentious. Secondly, if it's being used to describe all of Aphex Twin, it means nothing, because Aphex Twin is everything. Despite being Irish and possibly the greatest musician to come out of Ireland, fight me, he did most of his work in the UK because I guess all the farmers and sheep shaggers weren't super into the gizmos and gadgets that were involved with making IDM. His songs range from something that you could actually possibly, maybe, potentially hear in a nightclub if the DJ was in a weird mood, to just really sad. Apparently he used to make songs during lucid dreams that he had, and then try to recreate those songs when he woke up. He would also often do remixes of other people's songs, whether those remixes had anything to do with the original song or were just a completely original track, depended on how he felt that morning. One time, a guy came to his house to pick up a remix. Aphex Twin realized he had forgot to make it, so he quickly ran upstairs and cranked it out in 10 minutes. And let's address the elephant in the room. His face. It's on nearly every album cover and in most of his music videos. Whether it's on Dancing Women on the Beach or Strange Little Girls or whatever this thing is, he kind of turned himself into a middle finger to pop stardom, I guess. In a world where music demands personality, he's giving it to you in the most off-putting way possible. And finally, we have Captain Beefheart. Captain Beefheart, unlike everyone else I've talked about before, is not just weird. He's like a walking abstract painting that learned to play music wrong, on purpose, and somehow made it sound genius. Or terrible. It really depends on who you ask. Born Don Van Vliet, I don't know. The Captain was a painter, poet, musician, singer, and general oddball who was the frontman of Captain Beefheart and the Magic Band. Some would say he was more of a tyrant of the Magic Band. I would say that, and I'll get more into that later. In terms of the actual music, how do I describe it? It's like throwing everything I've talked about into this video already into a blender, blending it, putting that blender in a comically larger blender, along with time signatures that actually hate you and guitars tuned to the key of shitfuck, and blending it all up some more. And then running up the stairs, drinking it, realizing it's awful, and then vomiting all over yourself while falling down the stairs onto a bouncy castle full of small children, and they're all drinking the same thing, so they're all vomiting while they're bouncing up and down, and it's the worst experience of your entire life. But it depends on who you ask, it might be pretty good. His most popular album, I would say his best album, but I'm not sure that's really the word for it, is easily Trout Mask Replica, released in 1969, produced by Frank Zappa, because of course it was. It's easily one of the most infamous and divisive albums of all time. This picture alone can send any self-proclaimed music nerd into shock. So, how does one go about making such an odd body of work? I'll tell you how. You, allegedly, lock your band in your house for 8 months, force them to rehearse 14 hours a day, make them eat only bread because that's all you can afford, and then try to stop them having emotional breakdowns and trying to escape through the windows before sitting down and recording the whole thing in 4.5 hours. Because that's what happened, that's what Captain Beefheart did. Why he kidnapped his band is completely beyond me, and honestly, so is the music that came out of it. It's 28 tracks of absolute madness. Every instrument is out of sync with each other, both in terms of rhythm and key, random bits of spoken word poetry, nature sounds, talking creepily to little children as you record those nature sounds, and Captain Beefheart chanting over it like a mad preacher who just set the world record for longest line of 80 street sugar taken in one snort. But the thing is, it's not just insane for the sake of it. There's a reason he had them practice 14 hours a day for 8 months. It's precise. Every beat, every note, carefully and meticulously placed exactly in the way that Captain Beefheart wanted it. He was a musical genius. A mad genius, but still a genius. If you want to hear more about that album, I have made a whole video about it, and it was actually the first video I made on this channel, so it might actually not be very good, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's everything I have today. I know this isn't the kind of video that I usually make, but I wanted to try something different for a change. I would like to make kind of more stuff like this, but they take a lot more time than the usual album review videos, so don't expect them super often. Reviews are going to continue as normal from next week on, and again, if you know of any weird musicians or bands that I never mentioned here, comment them down below, and I may or may not make a sequel video to this, depending on how much people like it. And yeah, that's it, that's everything. Again, if you enjoyed this, subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Bye.